New York state government has passed a bill that would prevent squatting by changing one simple thing. Let's talk about it. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about New York state government passing a bill that would prevent squatting by changing the legal definition of tenant. Now, we live in a crazy society where everything has got to be 100% laid out by the book, or else people take advantage of it. They find loopholes. They find all kinds of ways to do things that are, quite frankly, very illegal, very intrusive, and very annoying, to say the least. The new definition of tenant says a tenant shall not include a squatter. As I said, you shouldn't have to say that, but things got to be black and white. So when the police come to somebody's house, as we've seen in New York and other parts of the country, where somebody's squatting, meaning they are living in their home illegally, not paying rent, not a tenant, the police can remove them without having to go to court, without having to go through an eviction process, because they are not a tenant. Squatters do not have tenant rights. Now, if you're a tenant and you have a lease and you are paying rent, even if you are late on your rent, you've not paid in a month or two or whatever it is, you still must go through an eviction process if you're a tenant. You can't just be kicked out. They can't just take the doors off of the property because you're not paying rent. You got to go through a legal process. But if you're not a legal tenant and you're a squatter, you don't have those rights. So the police can come and get you up out of there immediately. That's how that goes. Now, before I go any further into it, let's get to the actual news clip. Of course, I will link to everything in the box, but without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Back to this breaking news and the 7 on Your Side investigators getting results. Governor Hochul just signed a new bill a few moments ago that would make it more difficult for people to quote unquote squat in a home that does not belong to them.
Now, when I said prevent, understand this. I think there could still be some squatting. I don't know all the particulars behind how someone could still squat, although it says a tenant shall not include a squatter. But this is going to prevent a lot of the BS we've seen over the past few days, weeks, months on social media, internet, everywhere else. But I digress.
Yeah, New York lawmakers took action this weekend, voted in favor of changing the law after a series of 7 on Your Side investigations.
And any investigation our 7 on Your Side team does is a great one. But when there's actual change happening because of it so quickly, it's just, it feels so good to see it. Dan, you've been...
Now, some are going to say that they shouldn't be taking credit for all this and that and the third. A lot of times when you reach out to the news and things become so popular that you get international attention, you got guys like me talking about it and everybody else in the world giving their opinion, giving their 2 cents, then it becomes a point of embarrassment for a particular place like New York State, New York City, and then they want to get into action. We've seen the same thing happen in Georgia with some of the squatting incidents. Nothing happens until it goes to the media, it gets a bunch of attention, it becomes embarrassing. Now we got to solve it. So they are right to take credit for this action taking place. Let's keep on going.
Working so hard on this, and new developments today.
It is crazy. We launched our first squatter investigation right here in Mornington 10 just a few weeks ago, and we're already seeing some pretty big changes. In just the past 5 days, our investigations led to an accused squatter getting criminally charged in court, and now lawmakers voted to change state law. Take a look.
Announce the results.
Ayes 102, noes 43.
The bill is passed.
Over the weekend, both the state assembly
The bill is passed.
and the state senate passed the new bill. It's a small change lawmakers say will have a big impact.
A huge impact on so many people who are suffering through squatting scenarios.
They voted to change the state's property law, stating a tenant shall not include a squatter. They say it will make it easier for police to intervene in cases when someone enters a home without permission or legal paperwork, instead of having to take them to housing court.
If we don't voice these issues like this in the news, then none of this may have ever elevated to...
You're correct, 100% correct. It had to get in the news, had to get the public attention. And then again, it's level of embarrassment. You want to have good PR for your state. You don't want to be seen as someplace you can just go squat and do whatever you want to do. So now there must be action.
Being a part of the New York State budget just 3 weeks after the reporting you did here.
That's not going on. This was crazy. This was totally nuts. I have no idea how this was just okay. This guy is not a tenant. He's a squatter barging into someone else's property like it's his. And the police are right there, but they couldn't do anything because of the way the law was structured. That's totally nuts. So now I hope that this guy, who, by the way, has been removed, and I think he was arrested, guys like this should not be able to do this kind of thing anymore as a result of the new law.
We've reported on numerous cases of accused squatters, including one that was criminally charged last week in Queens. After our reports, at least 4 lawmakers filed anti-squatting legislation, which led to a last-minute compromise over the weekend.
What do you think it is that pushed this over the edge? This was added in the last few days.
It was the voices of so many of your viewers, my constituents, everyone from across New York State. After we did the story last time, I got hundreds of calls from individuals who said they were finally being heard.
I have the new state law right here, and since the governor signed it, it means it can go into effect immediately. So that means police can start using it in cases throughout the state of New York.
So what does change right now?
Well, as of right now, if someone moves into your home, a stranger in the middle of the night with any lease or claim to your property, police can arrest them possibly for trespassing instead of having to take them through housing court, which has been happening for the last few years.
So they're immediately out of your house. This is not a tenant who overstayed his or her welcome, who didn't pay rent. This is somebody, a random person who went into your home and started living there. You can get them.
Now, the problem might come when you're talking about short-term rentals. If that's a thing in New York, I'm not sure if it is. Or if you invited someone in your home and then they're refusing to leave, that could be where things get tricky. But squatters are not usually in those camps. A squatter is usually somebody who breaks into your home and then takes ownership of it, or they take a claim to it. Oh, now I have a lease. I have some kind of skin in the game. And it's usually done with properties that are left vacant for a period of time. You could be deployed somewhere overseas, maybe somebody's parents, as you saw in the beginning with the guy that was trying to barge in, that woman's house was inherited to her by her parents who had passed away. So you're living across the country and you come back to New York after a couple of weeks to try and sell the house. And then in that period of time between your parents not being there and you trying to get there, somebody took occupancy of it and they say it's their right to be there.
Them out.
Yeah, because the number one question everyone asks me is, why can't you arrest them for trespassing? But since someone says, if they're a squatter, they say, I'm a tenant here for 30 days. Once police heard the word tenant, they'd automatically, by law, have to send you to housing court. So that will no longer happen.
There's another case that you brought us originally, that home that was an inheritance. It was a $2 million dream home in Queens. That case is still playing out in courts. How will this law affect that?
It'll be in court later this week. It probably won't affect it that much because that case is much more complicated. And the person who is accused of squatting lived and worked for the former homeowner who passed away.
See, that's kind of what I was talking about. If you were invited into the home previously, you had some kind of, you were there and you didn't just break in. That's a little bit different. But if you just straight up break into the house and say, oh, I'm a tenant, you can't do that.
This relationship.
Right. So that's not a clear-cut squatter case that would not be affected by the state law. But the second case that we had reported on, where the woman was in handcuffs at the end of the day, this law could have had implications of that case immediately.
Now, in that case, which you just saw, which was the guy barging into the house, all this and that, he, I believe, was renting out rooms in the house to other people. I think that's how that went. That might have been the other one. It's so many cases, I get kind of confused. But if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But imagine a squatter taking over your house. And not only did he live there, but his friends lived there and he was able to rent out rooms to them. Imagine a squatter taking your home and converting it into an Airbnb. That's crazy.
This is a national problem. Is this going to be the template for the whole country? I mean, this is something that has reverberated. This has been going on state to state. I mean, coast to coast.
It really has, and I've been talking to reporters at all of our ABC stations across the country. This is a problem in every state. So far, 2 states have done something about it. New York now, top of the list, and Florida. We'll see what happens next.
Yeah, no doubt. And by the way, so many great reports. Thanks for coming. I know you're super busy, so for updating this. But if you want to get up to date with all these reports, you can go right now. All the reporting on this topic. And if you'd like to weigh in too, we have an opportunity for you to do that. Let us know your story. ABC7ny.com. Head to the site and then click on the tab 7 on your site. Investigate.
So there we go. Shout out to ABC7. Shout out to everybody out there who's been reporting on this story, not only in New York State, New York City, but all over the country. When you get things out to the general public, when there's a lot of eyeballs on it and people start to pay attention, not just in your local place, but all over the world, that a lot of times prompts people in power positions to do something. Without that pressure, it's whatever. It's not really a big deal. They pretty much just do whatever they want to do for their donors, not really for their constituents. They got to get a lot of pressure on them, unfortunately, to do things for their actual constituents. But as I close, I want to say this. Shout out to New York State government and Kathy Hochul for doing something here, although there was a lot of pressure before you had to do it, but I'm glad you did do something. And I hope that squatting is a thing of the past, because it's really ridiculous. People just take advantage of laws, manipulate them for their own purpose to victimize other people. I don't like that. If you are an actual tenant, that's one thing. You have rights. But if you're just a squatter going to somebody's house saying, oh, I live here, no. Get out, go away. And in some parts of the country, you try to do something like that while somebody's there, well, there might not be a need for the police to come out and send to the penitentiary to make big rocks to little. I'm just saying. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your take on this law in New York passing that changes the definition of tenant to say this does not include squatters? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. This is a fantastic thing, a great thing, long overdue. I'm glad they're doing something, because this had become a problem that has raged out of control. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.